out in the shed again and working on the Riley again. I think I've mentioned a few times I'm waiting for parts. The main thing I'm waiting for is weld through primer, so I can finish the petrol tank, because I've folded up flanges on the ends and the baffle on the middle, and also welded the seam. I want to, before I plug weld this in place, what I'm going to do is put holes around the outside, plug weld it through very carefully so I don't actually end up making holes in it, but I want to put weld through primer on that flange where it's all been hammered and the zinc coatings come off. So I'm still waiting for that. Unfortunately they sent it via Aramex, who I'm pretty sure if you did a survey in New Zealand would top the worst courier company awards. It's been sitting up in Auckland for a week now, so I don't know what's happening there. Hopefully it's on the way soon. But I did get another thing I was waiting for, which was some solder. I had to buy this. This is resin cored solder rather than acid core. I didn't want to risk having acid inside the tank or inside any of the seams. This is metalworking solder, it's not electrical solder. This little reel, that's 500 grams, was $132. It's getting quite expensive, that stuff. But what I've done is I cleaned all of this up, got rid of the zinc around where I was going to weld and solder. I punched holes through the outer shell on the inside and I fitted this down. I tinned the inside of this piece and the outside of the tank, and then I plug welded through the holes. So this is welded on, that's why I've got the MIG out, welded on from the inside and then soldered. So soldered all the way around the outside, so it's crept all the way into that joint, and I soldered it from the inside as well. You can't really see, you can see where some of the solder's dribbled out. So that should be mechanically very solid, and in terms of liquid it should be leak proof, I'm hoping. If I knew the right sort of stuff to use, if there's some sort of RTV or some sort of petrol proof sealant, I would wipe some of that on the inside. This is going to be, the whole tank's going to be sealed with red coat, so that should do it. I think that'll take care of any other tiny pinholes. I don't think there are any. It took quite a lot of solder to do that. There's solder all over the place. So I'm pretty sure that should be nice and solid. So the next thing to do is make basically the same trick, make the little plate that I'm going to solder onto the top here. I'm going to do the same trick where I drill a couple of holes in the outer skin. I use the MIG to plug weld from the inside to really attach this to the tank, and then I'm going to solder it to make it all fuel proof. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm using these adapters, I think they're called. It's like a male thread to female thread. These are this is a 1/4 British standard pipe taper thread. I happen to have the right tap for those, so what I did was drilled and tapped these. I just use this by hand. I don't use the drill to under power to go through this. I do this in the drill to make sure these go square. These are on a taper, of course, so these will thread in. And then I think I've just got enough silver solder. I found some little leftover pieces of silver solder rod, and I will silver solder these to the steel from the top, so that there's no way these can come undone. What I was worried about is if I just soft solder them and you're tightening these up, if these break loose, then it's really hard to fix. So those will be attached to there. There's two of them, one for the main pickup and one for the reserve. And then I'm going to use these little angle connectors which are also on a taper thread, which can then be threaded into the top like that, and that will be where I pick up do the fuel pickups, which will come from the fuel tap here. So there'll be short lengths of solid pipe. I'll have little loops in them probably where they join onto these, so these will sort of sit around here somewhere. There'll be the two of them and the pipes going off. And what I will do for the pickup tube is there's a hole in there which happens to be the exact right size for this cupro nickel pipe. I've got enough of it there to make the two pickups that go into the tank, and obviously one will be lower down than the other, and that's how you get that sort of reserve function. So the next thing to do will be strip the zinc off this so I can solder it nicely and weld it nicely. And to do that, I put it in a little container. It happens to be a cat food container, and I will put a little bit of hydrochloric acid into that, spirit of salts, and then leave that, and that'll just take the zinc off and get me back to bare steel. You always add the acid to the water, so you never add water to acid, because if you think about it, when you're adding the acid to the water, you're starting off with the weakest concentration and building up. If you just put water into the acid, you've got the maximum concentration, you're trying to go down, and there's a danger of it sort of spitting and making a mess and getting in your eyes and blinding you, that sort of stuff. So I always do this outside as well, mainly because the fumes from that hydrochloric acid will make any bare steel around rust instantly, which is kind of funny that I'm using it to take zinc off this to get it back to bare steel. But yeah, the fumes are very corrosive. And then I'll just do the same as I did there. That should be far enough away that it's not going to remelt the solder. And then I just wait for the primer, and then I can do the rest. So I may be able to punch the holes in this. I'm not quite sure if I've left enough of a flange that my yeah, it should be fine. My little nibbler tool here should work. I remember when I first got these, they were really expensive. I got these to do the floor plans in my first MGB. I think they're a lot more reasonably priced now. It's like a dual-headed tool with a punch on that side, and you can rotate the head around, and you've got a little flanger on that side. Very useful little tool. So metal into the acid next. I've finished welding and soldering up the fuel connection. Basically done exactly the same way as the other side. Drilled some holes through the tank, welded it from the inside, plug welded it to the metal strip, and I previously tinned everything and then just soldered to seal it. These brass fittings, I silver soldered them to the steel first. So silver soldered those in place, pickled it in the citric acid, cleaned it all up, soft soldered it, and the way I did that is the same way you do body solder. I tinned it and then wiped it down with a clean rag, so it left a covering or a thin layer of solder on both surfaces. And then I was a bit worried if what the welder would do to the solder. It just blasts straight through it, so it welded fine to the steel. There's actually 3 plug welds on that, so that's never going anywhere. And then just the soft solder to seal it, and then these The other thing I did was, it was a good thing I checked this. I had made sure that these will fit into there like that, and they will just be soft soldered in place, or possibly silver soldered, because you don't want these ever coming off. But I had to make sure that the hole through the middle of that would fit that tube as well. So that's fine there. One will sit almost on the bottom, just above the bottom, and I'll put a, it won't have a flat bottom, I'll cut the bottoms off at an angle, and then the next one will sit slightly higher up. That'll be the main feed, and then, oops, that'll be the main, and the other one will be the reserve. And I'm not sure which one's which yet. It depends on how I run the piping from the little tap. And I'll probably just use a bit of Teflon tape around those to get those in the right position but tight. And then the other thing I did was I soft soldered a nut to the top of the fuel cap. I didn't want to risk silver soldering this, and this doesn't have a lot of force on it, so soft solder should be fine. This is a solid cast piece. It's quite a nice piece. And I've got this. I'm not sure if this is off the Riley or off an Austin 7, but it's a period thing. It's a drain plug. Rotherham's of Coventry. So Riley's were made in Coventry. And it's got that little recess there. So what I'm thinking is I can make the fuel dipstick probably from brass rod or brass tube. I think if I sandblast it to give it a matte finish, it'll show up the petrol level. So that will be soldered into there, and that will just screw in there sort of finger tight. I may drill a little hole through the side of this and then down so that I've got a little vent there. Of course, this. Go on there like that. Ow. With the right sort of gasket. It's just a piece of rubber there for now. Oh, it works pretty well. So that will be the petrol tank as soon as my other bits and pieces arrive. I have been buying a few other things. I've been winning a few little auctions on the local Trade Me website recently. I got a nice little Castrol 2-gallon petrol can. It's actually labelled Castrol Wellington. These were all made, it's a Lesco can. So these were made by Southwards, which is that car museum I go to. That was his company that made these. So this was pretty clean. I just gave it a really quick scrub down with a with water, and then a little bit of red Scotch-Brite, not too hard though. And then I just put petrol over it just to protect it. What I was hoping is that this can would fit into the tail, but there's not enough room to get it in past the fuel tank, because I was thinking it would be quite nice to be able to carry another little petrol can in the tail. I can fit a small one of the modern plastic ones will drop in there fine. The other thing is I may end up making a sort of shelf that goes in here. Normally the spare tyre would go here, but I never carry a spare tyre. So for one, I don't actually have one. I probably do have a rim there I could use as a spare, but I'd need to sort them out and put a tyre on it. So the other option would be carrying a can sort of on the little shelf in there, but I don't think it's actually really needed to have a little can. Probably what I would do is have the little plastic one in the tail, but maybe not have it full of petrol. I'm not sure. So there is that. I also bought I think that was $30. I bought a pile of old electrical bits and pieces. It's little fuse boxes and what looks like a couple of dash lamps and a few other odds and sods. A lot of it I won't be able to use. But again, that was pretty cheap. I think that was $30, about that, something like that. Maybe less. I just put in a bid right at the last second and got them. And the other thing I won recently was a set of German Whitworth spanners. They look like nice thin spanners. I really like the super slim ones, which are these ones, because they're nice and thin. I've got not metric, the American ones, AF and BSF of those. So I'm hoping this other set will be nice thin spanners similar to this. When I'm doing anything up on the car, undoing things, I'll use my power wrench thing. What do you call it? This thing. And that's really good for undoing stuff. These aren't cheap for some reason. It's one of the tools that's never on sale, never on special. So in the end, I just paid for it. But to do things up, I always use the spanners and do them up by hand because there aren't a lot of torque figures for most of the bolts on these. And so if you use the period spanners, they're sort of the right length that you'd have to try pretty hard to over torque things. So, you know, using the right spanner, you can get quite a good feel for when something's torqued up nicely. So they should be coming soon too, I hope. But yeah, like I say, the main thing I need now is the weld through primer so I can put that baffle in, and put the baffle in. I'll give the thing a really good clean out as well. I'll probably clean it out, make sure it's perfectly dry, clean it out with acetone or methylated spirit, something like that, which will soak up any moisture in it, and then put the red coat sealant in it. But it's coming along quite nicely. I did think, and then forgot to do it, I was going to stamp on this little metal plate before I welded it in what the capacity was of the tank. It's about 32 and a half litres, about 7 UK gallons, but I forgot. So what I might do is make a little brass plate, stamp it on that, and solder that to the outside of the tank. I think it would just be useful to have that information here somewhere. But, you know, they used to do that sort of thing for radiators and various things. They'd solder a little stamped nameplate on it, so I think that would work fine. It's either that or once I've painted the tank, stencil it on. I think that's about it for now. Out working on the car again. My spanners arrived, which was good. It's a full set, and it even came with the little spring clip that holds them together, which is pretty cool. So these are German Elora number 100. So that's a nice little set of spanners there, which is good. They were pretty clean when I got them, but I ran them through the ultrasonic cleaner just to get any grease off them, and then just rub them down with some of that aircraft ACF 50 stuff, anti-corrosion stuff. And I've also made up the fuel dipstick thing. It's just a piece of brass rod. I've been playing with different finishes to see what shows up the level of the fuel the best, and I tried just plain shiny brass. I tried sandblasting a bit of it to give it a sort of matte finish, and this finish that seems to work the best is I went over it with 400 grit sandpaper on the lathe to put grooves in it that way around. they're not very deep or anything. And I've soldered the end in, and I've drilled a little hole, so there's a vent hole, and I knurled the edge of this as well. And unfortunately it slipped in the chuck, so it's left some little marks there, which is annoying, but doesn't really matter. And of course this goes down into there like that. I've just got a little rubber O-ring there for the moment. I need to get a red fibre washer the right size, I think. The O-ring works, so I think that should work pretty well. The paint, the primer I'm waiting for, apparently it was redirected. It was misdirected, sorry. So that's now on the way. Hopefully it'll be here tomorrow. And I'm still waiting for the random selection of old electrical gear which may have a instrument panel lamp on it. I'm not sure if it's an instrument panel lamp or a number plate lamp. I'm going to need both of those. I don't actually need an instrument panel lamp, but it would be nice, which is why I haven't bothered putting any of the holes in the instrument panel yet. I just want to wait and see if there is one of those lamps there. I might need to rearrange things a little bit to fit that in place. And I think that's it. I'm in town tomorrow, unfortunately, so I won't get to do anything on the car tomorrow. If the weld through primer arrives maybe on Thursday night, I'll be able to start welding this thing together, weld the baffle into the middle, and start going around the edges and seal it all up, which would be good. And I still need to figure out how I'm going to do the straps that hold it in. So I'm thinking that they can bolt through this rail here, come up and over, and have a clamp that goes around the rear cross member here and have an adjuster in it somehow. I'm thinking along the lines of the sort of straps you see on like big rig type petrol tanks, something with a little screw adjuster so you can tension it down. But I'll get the tank finished first. It'd be nice to do those from sort of brass strips or something, but I don't have any, and it's quite expensive to buy long strips of thin brass like that, even if you can get it here. I'm not sure where I would get that from. So they'll probably end up just being painted steel or stainless steel. And I've just noticed that it has distorted a little bit. The advantage of doing it this way with this flange is that flange doesn't have to be at 90 degrees. I just need these two edges to touch nicely so I can do a nice weld there. So if that flange has to be bent a little bit to match that edge, it doesn't matter. And you're not really going to notice that. But I think that'll work pretty well. Of course, the annoying thing is when you take the petrol filler off, you have to pull it up a long way because of that dipstick. Although I suppose if you've just measured the fuel and it's low, you'll have this out, so you can take the cap off, fill it up, put the cap back on, then put that back in. It'll be something like that. So that's where we're at with the Riley.